Yo, what up? How goes it, my friends? I wanted to quickly make a video. The league is almost over, but I wanted to make a video of this build, even though it's not really a build that works. I still wanted to, you know, at least document it before it ends up in standard and the great void of standard. It is an EK Inquisitor. So what I want to do is I want to run a map, and we will run a Alk and Go map right here for you. Good enough. And then after that, we'll go over the Ascendancy, the tree, the gear, and the flasks, and then the gem links, and then I'll talk a little bit about, I'll talk a little bit about why I think it doesn't really work, and what I could probably do to fix it, but what I probably won't do, just because it's, you know, kind of worthless at this point to do so. Anyway, let's go on in. Alright. So, I will say this build is really fun to map with. Like, super fun to map with. I think that the content that this build would really shine would be probably Delimir farming. I really think that if you have a headhunter, that could really turn this build into like a powerhouse during a Delimir farm. If you're doing like triple beyond, you could do like hella Deli maps. Like probably I have done, you know, hella Deli maps with this build. You can do like, I wouldn't say 100% Deli, but you could probably do like 80% Deli and be just fine. I did 80% Deli with this build, and I didn't even have like half the like really good upgrades that I have now, so yeah, I would say just, you know, go ahead and Deli farm with this. It's not like even close to able to do Simulacrum wave 30, so it's not a Simulacrum farmer for sure. It's not a bossing character at all, like whatsoever. But you can see, like, once you get some buffs, you just start going to town, you know. It's a lot like Spark, I would say, in the fact that you really just sort of, you know, clear the whole screen. And as you can see, the single target, abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. So, the reason I don't want to show you a Minotaur or anything is because I'd be here for an hour. So, anyways, let's talk about the build. So the build, I initially started this as like a really tanky Spark character, like the kind of like a Valor Mage build, like the one he made with, like, you know, melding of the flesh and you know, a bunch of max res, a bunch of armor, Aegis Aurora, energy shield, replenishing and stuff like that. All sorts of really good stuff. But the problem with that ended up being damage was too low, and I really like Spark. I think it's one of my favorite skills in the game, but it just wasn't, doing enough damage, so I wanted to switch gears. I thought about doing Stormbrand for a bit, and then we kind of landed on EK because, I thought it would be a pretty fun skill to do. So I first started with the initial, trying to figure out what damage type I was going to convert to. I wanted to do cold, but I had this Watcher's Eye, and I wanted to use it because it's, a really good Watcher's Eye, and I wanted to take advantage of dropping this myself and not having to have paid for it, which is kind of what ended up really steering me in the wrong direction. I just should have bought probably a Wrath Watcher's Eye with Wrath Crit and Fizz Conversion. And then I should have gotten the rest of my Fizz to Lightning on some gloves. I should have worn one Call of the Brotherhood ring, so I would go Fizz to Lightning to Cold. And then at that point, a lot of my damage, a lot of my gear, a lot of my everything would have probably actually been able to have been used, and I wouldn't have had to craft a whole new gear set, because what ended up happening is, because I wanted to use this Watcher's Eye and I didn't have a good way of converting all of my Fizz to any sort of element, I looked up some videos and saw that people were fully converting to fire with the Volcanus. And I know that this is kind of a, people do this all the time with the Inquisitor, the Bladefall Blade Blast build that popped up in Ultimatum League, was converting fully to fire, and you get a lot of really good stuff from this dagger, i.e. free 100% conversion, 200% increased critical strike chance, you get Fizz damage with hits against ignited enemies, and 50% chance to cause bleeding on hit, and when enemies are bleeding, you do increased fire damage. Plus it gives you a hell of a lot of flat damage. Actually, I was wrong. You get 240% increased crit strike chance because of the implicit there. So you get a lot of flat damage just from this weapon, along with almost 250% crit chance. So it looks like it would be a pretty good weapon to use, right? So that's why I ended up taking Battle Mage. Now, I have not yet figured out a way to use Fanaticism. The best way I could think of is maybe a Kinetic Blast, and but Kinetic Blast doesn't scale off cast speed, so maybe not. I don't know, but we use Battle Mage, and we get more attack damage for each non-instant spell we've cast in the past 8 seconds. That doesn't matter because we're not an attack-based build. And we did that instead of Inevitable Judgment because essentially it's just more damage, right? We take this for a lot of free crit. We have 280 intelligence, which is 280% crit. So between this and this, between my dagger and this node, we get almost 500% increased critical strike chance. It's almost exactly 500%. So that's a lot of free crit, right? So when we look at Ethereal Knives, we have a base crit of 6%. What's the math on that? So 6 times 500%. So that's about a 30% crit chance. So just from those two things, though. so that's really nice. We also have the 2% spell crit from our chest piece, so that brings this up to 8. So 8. So that's a 40% chance crit. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. We also take Sanctuary and Pious Path for the Consecrated Ground, just really strong nodes defensively. Give yourself a lot of recovery. And then we also have Augury of Penitence. I wanted this because of the less elemental damage taken aspect more than the increased damage. And we're getting that through our Forbidden Flesh Jewels. Now, this is not the best Forbidden Flesh combo you can get for this build. I think any Inquisitor that's a crit-based build could benefit from Inner Conviction, the Hierophant node that gives you 4 power charges and 4 endurance charges. I think that would have been a much better option, but it's like 40 exalts for the set, so I ended up getting this for like 2x, and you know, it's almost as good. Not nearly as good, but it's still a really good node compared to like other things we could have gotten. Anyways, so we come up here, we grab the mana regen and life regen. We grab this stuff too because, you know, obviously it's a fuck ton of life. We grab our Cluster Jewel, we grab Arcane Potency, Purity of Flesh, Sovereignty, Auras are a big thing in this build. We grab these Divine Rafts and Divine Fury nodes with a large Thread of Hope, and then we also grab Divine Judgment so we can get the Fizz as extra of a random element. Fizz as extra is a very big thing in this build. Just probably the most important stat out of almost anything. And then we grab the Increased Effect node here. We get the Max Life Mastery, we get the Reservation Mastery, we get the Vitality Efficiency Mastery, we get the Crit Multi against unique enemies, and then we also get the Percent Life Mastery. We grab our second Cluster Jewel here. We grab the Reduced Cost of Skills, mainly because it's left over from Spark, because Spark just costs way too much mana, and without this, Ethereal Knives would still cost way too much mana. I've got a lot of minus mana cost, and it's still just, like, ridiculous. But it also gives us life, which is, you know, great. And then we come down here, we get 14% Fizz's Extra Fire, which is really nice, and then we get Avatar of Fire as well, because that's what we need for our Volcanist work. We also need to grab Ring of Blades somewhere, and realistically, if you're an Inquisitor, this is the only place you can do it, because you need 40 dexterity in this radius, and you could come all the way over the top and then come down here, but other than that, this is really the only place you can get it. So we come through Constitution to do that, so we do get a fair amount of life. Anyways, the Cluster Jewels are 2 of the same physical Cluster Jewels. It's just Battle Hardened, Iron Breaker, and Force Multiplier. These are just realistically the best 3 nodes we can get. The double damage chance is really nice because we do have an Awakened Spell Echo, so on our final repeat we have like a 30% chance to deal double damage. I think it's like 35 with the crit cluster. So anyways, for our mediums, we have 3 of these projectile damage mediums with Repeater and Aerodynamics. I wish they had like a little node that gave you like 25% chance to chain or something. So if you got 4 of them, you'd get an extra chain, but realistically that's not a thing. So we went with Pierce. I think we have like 5 Pierce. Yeah, we have 5 Pierce, including the Helm enchant. So So repeater, aerodynamics, repeater, aerodynamics, aerodynamics, and repeater. On the small little node you take through here, you can get like prod speed and like strength and like, you know, all sorts of shit. So it's really nice to look for you know, clusters with extra things. I still need to augment these, but that'll just not end up happening. I forgot to say we get glancing blows with our Thread of Hope as well. Just, you know, for some extra defense. We're at like 64% chance to block, which is pretty nice, you know. The small clusters, we have a 3 passive I-84 mana reservation here with Determination and 35% increased effect. This is probably our best small cluster. The other one, we have just one with Anger, and then just a bunch of other stats. We have a 2 passive here with Zealotry and increased effect to Conk Ground, which is actually great for this build. And a little bit of regen, a little bit of chaos res, and yeah. So we have 3 little small clusters for reservation because we were on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 auras in this build, which is a lot. I guess we can go over the gear now, and I guess we could go over the links and then the gear, I guess, because we could go over the auras. So we run Zealotry, Determination, Anger, Herald of Ash, Herald of Purity, Clarity, Vitality, and Skitterbots. If you wanted to go more defensive, you could probably switch out Skitterbots for like Tempest Shield, and then you'd also be immune to Shock. You'd proc your Aegis a lot more that way. Personally, I just wanted to get as many damage auras as I can, kind of to, you know, see if I could get some decent single target out of Ethereal Knives, but anyways, so we'll go over the links right now. So in our Volcanic, so the dagger, sorry about that. So we have Clarity linked to Arrogance, so we're reserving like 500 of our life or so. Really, it's kind of negligible. Like, it is nice having that life, but this is the only way we can actually fit in Clarity. So and Clarity is pretty important because without it we wouldn't be able to like sustain our mana, you know. And we also have our Vitality sitting up here. Vitality is important as well, just mainly so we can like regenerate our life, and because of our Watcher's Eye, which is a life on hit Vitality Watcher's Eye, and the Zealotry causes enemies to take 9% increased damage if they're on the consecrated ground, and that consecrated ground lingers for 2 seconds. Sorry if I didn't, you know, mention that earlier. Anyways, so in our helmet we've got Herald of Purity linked to Herald of Ash, linked to Enlighten, linked to Skitterbots. So we've got our Skitterbots and our 2 Heralds in there. In our Aegis, we've got Arcane Surge linked to Flame Dash, linked to Life Tap, so we can always, you know, Flame Dash if we need to. I just realized Arcane Surge only works if you use mana, so probably try and fix that somehow. We could probably link our Arcane Surge to like our Molten Shell somehow. Anyways, we have a Molten Shell linked to summon Ice Golem, and then we also have an Immortal Call, cast when damage taken setup. They're both level 3, so not really all that amazing stuff here. Really, you know, just normal stuff. And then we've got our Determination, Anger, and Zealotry linked to an Enlighten. I think if I had 2 Enlightened 4s, we could actually switch out Skitterbots for like another 50% aura, like probably like Hatred, or like, I don't know, maybe, I think Hatred would be the best because you get your 26% Fizz is extra, so that's like, you know, pretty nice. But other than that, I'm not sure what other auras I actually would use besides defensive stuff. I think War Banner would be probably the next one I'd squeeze in if I could. I think if we only ran like a level 1 Vitality, we could actually fit in a War Banner or a Defiance Banner. Let me just see if that is actually true. That is totally true. So yeah, we could totally fit in 10 auras if we, finagled some stuff here. Let me just see if... Let me just build this on the fly. Building it on the fly. Building it on the fly. Flying and building. Look at that. 10 auras, boys. 10 auras. Easy clap. And we've got our Arcane Surge back. Alright, so, yeah. So we do have Defiance Banner. We could probably switch that out for, like, I don't know, probably War Banner, and then get, like, 10% increased fizz. But the thing about War Banner, let me just read it really quick, is I think you actually have to be dealing physical damage. So there's Dread Banner for Impales, and then War Banner, nearby enemies take 8% increased fizz. So yeah, we're only doing fire damage, so War Banner really wouldn't do anything. So Defiance Banner is really the only play here. We do have 74% fizz reduction, like no evasion. We've got a little bit of chaos res, nothing major. 64% block and, capped res. We got a little spell suppression somewhere, but I think that's just from our helmet. Yeah. So, and then for our main damage link, we've got EK, Anomalous, because that gives us 5 additional proj with Ashes. So that's pretty insane. We end up firing 18 projectiles, and if you're gonna do like a pinpoint type thing, that'd be like, I don't know, 17 maybe, but it's a lot. So we link that to Awakened Fire Pen. This is probably one of the cheaper Awakened gems, along with Awakened Added Fire. Like the level 1 Awakened Added Fire is like 5 chaos. So getting 45% fizz as extra fire is just huge. Along with the +1 level, it's it's pretty insane. It's really, really good. We've got the fire exposure on hit with the fire pen, so we actually don't need it here. Just the gloves is a little bit, it's stronger. So anyways, we've got a level 23 EK, so 2120. I think that's like 7x, which is pretty quality stuff. We've got an Awakened Spell Echo that I wish was level 5, but it's not. The only reason I'm using Woke Spell Echo is because I dropped it from a Maven. Otherwise, we'd be using just the regular one. Whether you use Spell Echo or Pinpoint is kind of up to whatever your POB says and how you build it, but it is up to you. So we link all those to Anomalous Inspiration. I think Divergent would be the better play here, but we are kind of desperate for crit, even though we've got all the extra crit. I'll go over that in a second. And then we obviously link that to critical damage support. So that's our 6 link. It's nothing special. It's not that great, but the only thing that you probably could do is take out Fire Pen and put in something else. I forget what it is. It's not Ellie focus, but we'll go over that when we go over the POB. So let's go over the gear. So we went over the Vulcanus. This is just obviously a great one-handed weapon for when you're using Battle Mage. I'll talk about some other alternatives that we could use, but this is probably, you know, for 5 chaos, this is like insanely good. The helmet, we have EK, pierces an additional target. I actually got that while I was running a Gift of the Goddess, so pretty good. We link it to a Blizzard Crown, which ends up, you know, that cold damage ends up getting converted to fire, so always good to have a little more flat damage. We've got mana reservation, and nearby enemies take increased elemental damage. I should have Maven Orbed the mana reservation. Looking back on it, I kind of regret not doing that. But, you know, maybe nearby enemies have minus 12 to fire res would have been better to have as well. So either way, it's a decent helmet. We've got some flat cold damage to spells as well, some mana, some spell suppression. This is a really nice helmet, to be honest. It's pretty nice. And then we've got the Aegis. Obviously, we got a little bit of Fizz taken as cold. We're pretty tanky against Fizz damage, to be honest. Nothing really all that. Anything except one-shots kind of just gets mitigated, and then since we have so much recovery, we just regen pretty quickly. Plus, we have, like, you know, life on hit, and we're throwing 18 times 2, so that's like 16 plus 20. So we have like 36 times 26 life regen, if they all hit, you know. But anyways, we also have Ashes. Just overall, probably best in slot for almost any build that's, you know, a caster build that's scaling quality. So like Anomalous Spark and stuff like that. Really good amulet. The reservation is super strong. I don't think you can even get close to that amount of reservation on other amulets. So yeah, anyways, body armor, I Maven Orbed spell crit to get elevated spell crit, and I woke up that with Frenzy on hit just to, you know, so we get Frenzy charges. Cast speed is really important in this build. It's what makes it feel good. Kind of got unlucky on the suffix, but I wasn't expecting to get such good prefixes. I was gonna craft max life as extra ES, so we'd actually, you know, probably have 50% more energy shield. Like, we'd probably end up having like around 14,000 or maybe 13,000 energy shield. But we instead got percent life and flat life, and we're also Ellie Reflect immune from this body armor alone. So the only way this could be better is if we got some, you know, some resistance on the suffix. It'd be, you know, pretty insane body armor, but yeah, I just kept it because it's a little too good to, you know, roll over. Let's save the rings. So our gauntlets are pretty interesting. These were the gauntlets I had for Spark. They had the increased damage against chilled enemies, but I switched it using harvest resistance changes. So that cold res used to be fire, and the fire used to be cold, so I just switched them. And then we have an additional pierce here, and then we also have fire exposure and a nerve, and a little bit of chaos res. So decent pair of gloves. Not the best base, but you know, it gives us armor, so it's not bad. Headhunter, obviously, we have the Unnerved enchant, so we get a little more crit there. And then the boots. Good lord, the boots are pretty nice, but... So, the boots, I elevated Onslaught, and I woke orbed it with Tailwind. Normal affair of your standard, really good boots. I got really, really lucky with the suffix, and I got tier 2 dexterity. If it was tier 1, I would have been really pissed, because it would have been, you know, possibly mere tier if I was able to, like, have elevated Tailwind, which I didn't elevate. But tier 2 is great. You know, it's we have a serious lack of dexterity in this build, and that just fixed it straight up. So after that, I Azelinged, I suffixes cannot be changed, reforged crit for the elusive, Aisling slammed, bricked it, had to do it like twice, I think, and then we got move speed. So overall, really nice boots. We have the penetration enchant, which helps with single target, but you know, it's not great. What is our, does it show our elemental penetration? Let's see. Is it in the miscellaneous? Fire resistance penetration is 15%. And I've got 15% lightning penetration. Alright, I know it's a little more than that because of this. Anyways, so the rings, I've got lightning res, intelligence, flammability, and then some mana ES. The base, you know, not ideal, but this is really the only one that was available, so and it plugged all the holes basically in the leaking ship, so that's why we got this. The other one is just straight up fire damage against ignited enemies with a fuck ton of resistances, because even though you know, there's a fair amount of resistances elsewhere, this is just pretty much the only way we could have like actually res capped this build. I was really kind of hoping to get resistances on here as a suffix, but that didn't happen, so yeah. And then the flasks, we use a Cinder Swallow, Life Flask, Taste of Hate for the Fizzes Extra, Bottled Faith, and a Quicksilver. And yeah, so as for why the build doesn't work, this is kind of just a theory, but I have got a hell of a lot of flat damage, right? Like, I've got a fuck ton of flat damage. And I have also got a ridiculous amount of nearby enemies take increased damage. So, like, nearby enemies take 9% increased damage. Nearby enemies take 16% increased damage. Nearby enemies take 10% increased damage. Nearby enemies take 9% increased damage. So I've got a lot of that, but I don't have a lot of percent scaling. So, like, I've got Divine Judgment, and I've got some other, percent physical damage, but I don't have a lot of percent elemental. And I think that's really where it ends up being a problem. So I've got a lot of flat, and I've got a lot of damage against nearby enemies. So when I'm in, a single target battle, if I'm like relatively close to the boss, like I was with the cemetery boss, I end up doing a fair amount of damage, but it's not anything close to, you know, something that has a lot of percent scaling with a fair amount of flat instead of something with a shit ton of flat and like not a lot of percent scaling. So even though we've got all these auras, we don't have a lot of like aura effect. And personally, I think, you know, instead of the frenzy charges, if we had like 30% aura effect, that would actually probably be better for the build. I even have 15% shock, so that's another 15% increased damage taken. So I've got like something close to 60% increased damage taken against enemies. And I've even got the, I always ignite since I'm always critting, so I've got another 10% from the Cinder Swallow. So it's just, like the enemies are taking a ridiculous amount of increased damage, which, you know, should be more damage. So I've got close to 60% more damage just from that stat alone. But I don't have a lot of penetration, and I don't have a lot of, like I said, percent damage. So, essentially, yeah. The single target sucks. The clearing is, like, pretty nice. Like, it's actually a joy to map with. It's just, I don't know. I think it would need a couple of changes, and personally, I also think that the battle mage, like if you were gonna go battle mage, I think there's like better weapons than a Volconus, and you know, you could do stuff like maybe a disintegrator thing, but I doubt it. It's really kind of like a fucky sort of weapon, but there's all sorts of stuff out there that you can use, right? Like a weapon that would be able to replace this is probably a really high physical damage foil with, like, I don't know, some elemental, like, damage penetrates elemental damage, and other than that, really nothing can beat this. I can't even think of something that would be better than this for the same amount of money. I just think that the gear I have is like actually pretty like respectable gear. Like you would think pretty much anything would actually be able to work with this kind of gear, and it just ends up like not really being all that great. Like I tried doing a shaper with this build, and it works. It's doable. It's just not amazing, right? It just doesn't feel amazing. Like, and if someone can like look at the POE and tell me like something I could do to like make this a little better, or like, you know, maybe help. I don't even have like enough cold damage to get the max cold. Oh, that's so sad. But if someone can tell me like, you know, something I can do to like potentially make this a little bit of a better build, or like make it work, that'd be great. I think next league I'm going to really try to probably do cold conversion instead of fire conversion. And that's probably because I think cold damage is a lot easier in the long run to scale percentage wise, like especially like anger, all you get is flat, right? But with hatred you get fizzes extra and you get more cold damage. So that would be, you know, that double dipping fizz to cold with the hatred is why a lot of the phys conversion builds are so powerful. That's mainly the reason, I would say, is there's a lot of good ways to scale that. I just don't think this build is a single target build, and I just wanted it to be, so I guess my expectations were a little too high. I do think that realistically this is pretty fun. I have had a lot of fun playing this build, but it's definitely not a league starter, and it's definitely not something that can do all content. Like, I think just even thinking about doing an invitation with this build like makes me shiver because it's just so not a good idea. Anyways, I'll include a POB, and I will try and, you know, include some weapons that might actually make this a little bit more viable. I also think that eventually maybe respecking to like come up here and then also grab Pain Attunement and go low life and get like Petrified Blood might work. Other than that, I don't really know of a way to get more damage, right? Like if you just count the amount of things I have on this build where nearby enemies take increased damage, it's a lot. So one thing I might actually in the future do is grab Inevitable Judgment, not have Augury of Penitence, and then focus on, you know, switching out the Penetration Gem, not getting exposure, but getting something else, and, you know, just getting all sorts of other ways to get around the fact that we just have a huge amount of base fire damage from everything, and trying to scale that to the moon. So anyways, I will probably be streaming the start of the next league, and I will put out more videos of the builds I make in that league. Whoops-a-daisy. And once I do that, maybe one or two of the builds will be actually original. Don't hold your breath, though. Alright, you guys. I will see y'all later. Have a good night, or evening, or morning, or afternoon, or whatever it is, wherever you are. Alright. Take care. Stay safe. Love you a long time. Bye.